Anda kembali menyaksikan program 60 Menit Special Report, membuka mata, mengungkap fenomena. Saudara, generasi muda adalah masa depan dunia. Lalu, bagaimana generasi muda bisa menjawab tantangan global? Jurnalis Kompas TV Andina Kusumo melaporkan langsung dari Konferensi Pemimpin Muda Asia Tenggara atau YSEALI Summit 2023 di Bali. Kompas TV juga berbincang secara eksklusif dengan Wakil Menteri Luar Negeri Amerika Serikat tentang peranan generasi muda sebagai agen perubahan.
Di berbagai belahan dunia, pemuda menjadi tumpuan pergerakan bangsa dari masa ke masa, termasuk di Asia Tenggara. Seperti yang terwujud dalam program Young Southeast Asian Leaders Initiative atau YSEALI, menyatukan pemuda di kawasan ASEAN untuk berkontribusi dan berdampak dalam perubahan. Lalu bagaimana inisiatif mereka menjawab tantangan global di masa depan? Never too young to lead. Tak pernah terlalu muda untuk memimpin. Inilah ungkapan yang mencerminkan 150 pemuda peserta Young Southeast Asian Leaders Initiative YSEALI Summit 2023 yang digelar di Bali 4 hingga 7 Desember lalu. You are collaborating on projects. YSEALI adalah sebuah program yang memfasilitasi para pemuda usia 18 hingga 35 tahun dari negara-negara anggota ASEAN dan Timur Leste guna meningkatkan kemampuan sebagai pemimpin masa depan.
Yang kita pengen cari di sini leadernya adalah orang-orang yang melihat ada isu atau permasalahan tertentu dan mereka mau terlibat menjadi solusi dari permasalahan tersebut.
Tak hanya sebagai program inisiatif kaum muda, YSEALI juga menjadi salah satu program strategis utama pemerintah Amerika Serikat menguatkan kerjasama dengan negara anggota ASEAN dan Timur Leste. Duta Besar Amerika Serikat untuk ASEAN, Yohannes Abraham, mengungkap, Asia Tenggara menjadi jantung utama strategi Indo-Pasifik negeri Paman Sam tersebut.
Every time I walk away from a YSEALI engagement, I leave incredibly encouraged. And that's not because the problems are small or they're easy. They're not. They're incredibly hard. But you can see the talent that is arrayed against those problems, and you can have confidence that we will find solutions together.
Sejumlah tokoh inspiratif berbagi pengalaman di perayaan 10 tahun YSEALI Summit 2023. Salah satunya senator asal negara bagian Hawaii, Amerika Serikat, Christopher Lee. 15 tahun belakangan, Chris Lee mengadvokasi dan menciptakan solusi atas sejumlah masalah terutama isu lingkungan yang berkaitan dengan pemberdayaan komunitas lokal dan pengembangan ekonomi. Pada Juni 2023 lalu, Chris Lee sempat berkunjung ke Kabupaten Wakatobi, Sulawesi Tenggara dan terlibat dalam program pertukaran profesional muda Amerika Serikat ke kawasan ASEAN dan Timur Leste. Chris Lee menekankan kekuatan kerjasama antar generasi muda di Asia Tenggara mewujudkan inisiatif-inisiatif kecil dan berdampak untuk lingkungan sekitar. Salah satunya di pulau-pulau kecil seperti Wakatobi yang mirip dengan tanah kelahirannya, yaitu Kepulauan Hawaii.
One of the things that I've been trying to do is help share some of the lessons that I've learned over the years for how to succeed, how to engage decision makers, how to catalyze change, and how to collaborate with one another, because the decisions that are being made in this region transcend borders, and the solutions need to as well, and that means having a network of young leaders who can work together.
Sejak berdiri tahun 2013 lalu, lebih dari 160.000 pemuda Asia Tenggara turut andil dalam sejumlah program YSEALI. Di antaranya program pertukaran ke Amerika Serikat, lokakarya regional di kawasan ASEAN, hingga kompetisi hibah bernama YSEALI Seeds for the Future. Salah satu penerima YSEALI Seeds for the Future adalah Aksata Pangan yang digagas oleh Siti Suci Larasati atau akrab dipanggil Laras. Aksata Pangan adalah sebuah gerakan inisiatif untuk mengatasi masalah sampah makanan di Kota Medan, Sumatera Utara.
Tapi orang-orang nggak ngelihat isu sampah makanan gitu. Jadi kayak kita coba raise, echoing tentang isu sampah makanan, dan begitu banyak proyeknya. Kita punya 4 program dan kita daftar salah satu programnya itu adalah Food Heroes. Jadi kita rescuing surplus makanan dari hotel, dari bakery, yang itu kita lakukan tiap hari sampai hari ini. Dan kita distribusiin ke around 12.000 masyarakat prasejahtera di Kota Medan, dan kita punya community partner. Itu ada, hari ini ada 20-an. Jadi kita kerja sama panti, rumah baca, yang di pinggir sungai Deli di Medan.
Selain Laras, Wiraya Vichaya Pratsetkun atau akrab disapa Min asal negeri Gajah Putih Thailand juga salah satu partisipan Wisely yang menerima dana hibah Wisely Seeds for the Future. Ia dan 2 rekannya dari Singapura dan Malaysia mengembangkan sebuah platform yang mengangkat kisah-kisah pejuang lingkungan inspiratif namun kurang mendapat perhatian dan dukungan. Min yakin strategi berbagi cerita atau storytelling mampu berdampak besar guna membangun kesadaran publik dan menggalang dukungan bagi pahlawan-pahlawan lokal penyelamat lingkungan.
Environmental is about the world. We should do this together, and I believe that if we can connect them together, we can empower them together. And like storytelling for me is very impact, because if you are doing something good but you cannot tell the story to anybody, so maybe no one will realize that your work is very amazing and your work is really needs support now.
Guna menggali lebih dalam tentang Wisely dan bagaimana Wisely menguatkan hubungan bilateral Indonesia-Amerika Serikat, serta seberapa besar kesempatan pemimpin muda Indonesia membawa perubahan bersama Wisely, saya berkesempatan mewawancarai Wakil Menteri Luar Negeri Urusan Diplomasi Publik Amerika Serikat, Elizabeth Allen. Saudara, pembicara utama dalam Young Southeast Asian Leaders Initiative atau YSEALI Summit 2023 ini datang langsung dari Amerika Serikat, yaitu Undersecretary for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs of the United States, Mrs. Elizabeth Allen. Thank you very much for your time with Kompas TV. Thank you for your opportunity and having us in this special interview. So, how are you? Welcome to Indonesia.
Thank you. It is so exciting to be in Indonesia. I have traveled around the world and in the region, and I have never been to Indonesia until this week. So I'm very excited to be here in Bali today to mark the 10 years of our YSEALI program, and then I leave for Jakarta tonight and spend a little bit of time in Jakarta.
So soon to leave Bali.
Yeah, I need to come back.
Yeah, you should. So I'm very curious about your first thought and your first impression about Indonesia and Bali in general, and also young people in Indonesia. What is your first impression since you arrived?
Sure. Well, first of all, Bali itself is beautiful, and the people have been very welcoming and very friendly the last few days. I was glad to both see some sun and some rain. It's always nice to see the ocean and the beach whenever we can travel. But in terms of our relationship with Indonesia overall, we are in a historic phase of a new bilateral cooperation between the United States and Indonesia. And so to your question about what we're thinking about the next phase, young people are at the very heart of the U.S.-Indonesian bilateral relationship. We know that 2/3 of the population in ASEAN are young people. And so much of how we're thinking about the future is in thinking about how we can empower them, how we can invest in them, how we can turn their ideas into action. And so I'm really energized in this new phase of U.S.-Indonesian relations to really be focusing on what we can do in the areas of education, in the areas of culture. I know that a lot of your viewers know that the United States and Indonesia just upgraded our partnership to a comprehensive strategic partnership. This is the highest level of bilateral relationship we can have, and that happened when President Jokowi visited Washington just a few weeks ago and met with President Biden in the Oval Office. And I think that just signifies that we really are in this new phase of a bilateral cooperative relationship.
What can we expecting for the following up of that you've mentioned earlier about the strategic partnership?
So the strategic partnership represents a new phase and a new opportunity for us to deepen our cooperation. We are already allies that are driven by a shared belief belief in democracy, a shared belief in an innovation-driven economy. And President Biden and President Jokowi have had a number of conversations on exactly that. How do we drive economic growth in both of our countries? How do we drive a region that is free, that is open, that is secure, that is prosperous? And so coming out of discussions about the comprehensive strategic partnership, you'll see increased cooperation on things like economic investment, on things like critical minerals, on things like development, and then particularly also on technology and the shared challenges that are facing all of our people. We'll look forward to working together. I think most exciting to me, given my job, is that a key pillar of our bilateral relationship in this comprehensive strategic partnership is education, and the importance of deepening the educational connective tissue between our countries. We have over 8,500 Indonesian students that study in the United States every year, and we want to increase that. We also know that we have a lot of U.S. students eager to come to study in Indonesia, so we'll be looking for ways to increase those types of exchanges.
That's a very interesting opportunities both for Indonesia and also United States. Now, I also learned from your background that you've been involved in education and cultural affairs from your previous role, and you know that Indonesia is rich for its culture and diversity, and also United States known for the land of cultural diversity. So my question is, how do you see these similarities about the culture, about the diversity, and also impact of the young generation?
This is a great question because I travel all over the world. So much of my job is showing up places to deepen relationships and to deepen partnerships. And one thing I see, particularly with youth in Indonesia and youth in the United States, including youth in the region as well, is youth are very driven to make change. They're very driven to make progress, to find solutions to challenges. They're driven by feeling a sense of mission and a sense of purpose. And so that is a similarity I see all over the world, which means that we, as the US government, think it's an important part of our policy agenda to find ways to invest in young people. Which brings us to why we're here today, to celebrate Waisili.
So Waisili also has various programs to offer for hundreds of the fellows from Southeast Asia. And also, what are the future opportunities if being selected for this program? What one young individual can make a positive change if they are selected in the future?
Well, we're very excited to have grown the Waisili program over the last 10 years, and we're very pleased to have announced last year that we're going to double the Waisili program in terms of its fellowships. So starting in the year 2025, we will be able to bring double the amount of ASEAN young people or ASEAN professionals to the United States, totaling 900 fellows per year that will be able to study in the United States. And we have over 6,000 ASEAN young leaders who have gone through the Waisili program so far. But beyond those 6,000, what we're so excited about is an area of growth to bring people into the Waisili network virtually. We have over 155,000 people across the ASEAN region who are part of the Waisili network. That means that beyond just the exchange programs and the in-person programs, we are looking for ways to broaden the access to this network, the power of this network, to people across the region, whether it's virtually or in person.
If we look back for the past 10 years, because Waisili initially launched in 2013, so how do you see that Waisili have strengthened the bilateral relation between Indonesia and the United States so far?
This is a great question because we talk often about bilateral relationships between countries, and what we have to remember is that countries are made up of its people. I very strongly believe that the future isn't just going to be shaped by government action, it's going to be shaped by the people in each country driving change and driving action. So the relationship between the people of our two countries is really at the heart of our bilateral relationship. And as we've seen the United States and Indonesia deepen cooperation, for example, on things like climate change, on things like sustainable development, on things like infrastructure and economy, people are at the heart of all of that. And in many cases, it's leaders who've gone through the Waisili program that are continuing to make change in all of their own industries that make up the portfolio of bilateral issues.
Tak hanya inisiatif kaum muda, Wakil Menteri Luar Negeri Amerika Serikat juga berbincang mengenai kondisi Palestina dan persamaan pemilu di Amerika Serikat dan Indonesia. Usai jeda di 60 Menit Special Report.
President Jokowi and President Biden agreed on the critical importance of protecting civilian lives.
Tak hanya berbincang mengenai peranan generasi muda, jurnalis Kompas TV Anindya Kusumo dan Wakil Menteri Luar Negeri Amerika Serikat juga berbincang tentang pentingnya menyelamatkan generasi muda Palestina dan tantangan pemilih pemula pada pemilu 2024 nanti yang dijalankan oleh Indonesia dan Amerika Serikat. Saudara, wawancara ini sekaligus menutup perjumpaan kita di 60 menit Special Report kali ini. Jangan lupa, pemilu kita laksanakan di 14 Februari 2024. Dan pastikan ikuti terus perkembangannya hanya di Kompas TV, independen, terpercaya. Saya Algin Fredianto pamit. Sampai jumpa.
Recently, President Joe Biden and President Jokowi met recently in the United States, and one of the key points that they talk about is how to cease fire in Gaza and how to bring peace in Gaza and stop the conflict. So my question is, how do you respond to that discussion between President Joe Biden and also President Jokowi for the ceasefire and peace in Gaza?
Yes, so we know that this came up in the Oval Office between our presidents, and they agreed on many things. President Jokowi and President Biden agreed on the critical importance of protecting civilian lives. And as Israel moves through its operational campaign, we have made very clear that they need to take steps to protect civilian lives. So we agree on that. We also very much agree on the need to get humanitarian assistance into Gaza. And over the last 2 weeks, we've seen humanitarian pauses that have allowed for increased humanitarian assistance to get into Gaza. And we will continue to push for that. We will continue to provide that humanitarian assistance. And finally, importantly, our two presidents agreed on the critical importance not to let this conflict spread any wider and to prevent it from becoming a regional conflict. So Indonesia and the United States are in discussions about how to make sure that the conflict doesn't widen, how to get humanitarian assistance into the region, how to get hostages out of the region, and how to protect civilian lives.
And looking forward for that plan to be implemented. And also, maybe this is the last two questions I want to ask you. You know that Indonesia next year, in February 2024, we will hold the general election, including presidential election, and more than 56% or maybe 57% of the voters is the young voters from millennial and Gen Z. And also I learned that United States also will hold the election in November 2024. And also there are a large number of the young voters. So my question is, how do the young voters in these countries that will hold the general election will make the impacts in the future?
This is a great question, because the United States and Indonesia, as you've noted, both have elections in 2024, as do several countries around the world. 2024 will see general elections in many countries across the world that will decide their government leadership, that will ultimately shape their future. And so what I would say to young people is use your voice, use your vote. It's really important, as you and I have discussed here today, given how many young people are a share of the population, that they vote for who they believe should be in power, because governments are meant to serve all of the people in their countries, not just some of the people in their countries. And if youth and our young leaders are looking to work collaboratively with their government leaders, with their governments, then they should have an active part in shaping who those leaders are. And then hopefully we will see leaders of governments of both of our countries work with young leaders going forward on these common solutions to challenges.
And this is last but not least, what is your expectation? What are you looking forward in the next visit to Indonesia?
Oh, the next visit to Indonesia. Well, I would love to come back.
Yeah.
So I'm going to Jakarta after I talk to you in Bali here today. And then I'd like to come back. I'd like to get to different parts of the country. I think, as I mentioned before, part of my travel is coming and not just sharing how the United States is thinking about our partnership, but also to listen. And so I would love to come back and continue to talk to young people who are making change in this world. I'd love to continue to come back to a lot of our cultural leaders. It's important to think about leaders in the areas of art and music and food and sports, because those are the things that ultimately bring a lot of the people in our countries together. And so one of the things I'm doing on this trip, and I will look forward to doing in the future, is talking to leaders throughout our cultural sectors about how they can also advance progress.
Okay, thank you very much for your time and also your inspiration and also your thought to share to Kompas TV. Thank you very much. Enjoy your visit to Indonesia. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Di tangan pemuda terletak masa depan bangsa. Inisiatif sekecil apapun dapat mengguncang dunia dengan dedikasi dan kolaborasi sebagai kuncinya, termasuk pemuda Indonesia, generasi emas dari bonus demografi yang akan berjaya tahun 2045.